Hello Year 7 and Year 8. Sorry that this third video has been a long time coming. I had a little bit of a busy week last week, but I'll try and do 2 videos this week to make up for last week's lack of video. I'm just going to dive straight back in then, and I thought we'd kind of pick up from where we left off last video, where we talked about the wedding of Zeus and Hera and honey, which Zeus kind of later came to be ambrosia, the food and the drink of the gods. So because the next part of the story links to Athena, who features quite heavily in the Odyssey, which we've been studying in lesson. So I know is a character that you are familiar with. And the next part of Fry's book explains how Athena was born, how she kind of came to be one of the Olympians. So I'm going to kind of just carry on from there then, because the beginning of this story, the conception of Athena, took place on Zeus's wedding day. So this little section is called Bad Zeus. So I think you can kind of guess what Zeus ended up doing on his wedding day to Hera. So here we go. Hera's cup was running over, literally at the moment, for an attentive naiad was filling her goblet with nectar up to and over the brim, but figuratively too. Her oldest son had made a brilliant marriage, and Zeus had sworn oaths of fidelity to her before all who mattered in the world. She did not notice that, even now, her insatiable lord was watching with lustful eyes the dancing of Leto, a most beautiful nymph from the island of Kos. Leto was a daughter of the Titans Phoebe and Coeus, themselves grateful recipients of Zeus's recent amnesty and present at the feast. A voice murmured in Zeus's ear, "You are thinking that my cousin Leto owes you her life and should therefore be willing to share her bed with you." Zeus looked up into the wise, humorous eyes of his tutor, Metis, the oceanid whose wit, guile and insight were unmatched anywhere else. Metis, whom he still loved and who he was sure loved him. His blood, already warmed by nectar and ambrosia, had been heated further by the dancing and the music. There's a footnote here that I just want to read to you guys because it's interesting. It says, actually, the gods did not have blood in their veins, but a beautiful silvery gold liquid called ichor. It was a paradoxical fluid because, while it retained all the eternal life-giving qualities of ambrosia and nectar, it was lethally and instantaneously poisonous to mortals. The spark that had always jumped between him and Metis threatened to burst into a great fire. She saw this and raised her hand. "Never, Zeus, never. I've been like a mother to you. Besides, this is your wedding day. Are you lost to all sense of decency?" All sense of decency is exactly what Zeus was lost to. He touched Metis under the table. Alarmed, she moved away. Zeus got up and followed her. She quickened her pace, turned a corner and darted down the mountainside. Zeus ran in pursuit, transforming himself first into a bull, then a bear, next a lion, and then an eagle. Metis hid behind a pile of boulders deep in a cave, but Zeus, turning himself into a snake, managed to slither through a gap in the rocks and wrap his coils around her. Metis had always loved Zeus, and, both worn down and touched by his persistence, she finally consented. Yet even as they came together, something bothered Zeus. A prophecy he had heard from Phoebe, something about a child of Metis rising to overcome the father. Afterwards, as playful pillow talk, they fell into conversation on the subject of transformations, metamorphoses as they are called in Greek. How a god or titan might be able to turn others or themselves into animals, plants and even solid objects, just as Zeus had done as he had chased Metis. She congratulated him on his skill at this art. "Yes," said Zeus with some self-satisfaction, "I pursued you as a bull, bear, lion and eagle, but it was as a snake that I captured you. You have a reputation for cunning and guile, Metis, but I outsmarted you, admit it." "Oh, I'm sure I could have beaten you. Why, if I had turned myself into a fly, you could have never caught me, could you?" Zeus laughed. "You think not? How little you know me." "Go on then," Metis taunted. "Catch me now." With a buzz and whiz, she turned into a fly and darted about the cave. In a twinkle, Zeus transformed himself into a lizard, and with a quick flick of a long sticky tongue, Metis, along with any possible child of Zeus's that even now might be forming in her womb, had been safely transferred to his interior. His father, Cronus's unkind habit of eating anyone prophesied to conquer him seemed to have been passed down to Zeus. When he slipped back to Olympus in his own shape, congratulating himself at how much cleverer than the supposedly cunning Metis he was, the music and dancing were in full swing, and his wife didn't seem to have noticed a thing. So this next little bit is called the mother of all migraines. The king of the gods had a headache. Not a hangover from the wedding feast, nor a headache in the sense of an annoying problem that needed solving. As a leader, he always had plenty of those, but a headache in the sense of a real ache in the head. And what an ache! Each day the pain grew until Zeus was in the most acute, searing, blinding, pounding agony that had ever been suffered in the history of anything. Gods may be immune from death, aging, and many of the other horrors that afflict and affright mortals, but they are not immune from pain. Zeus's roars, howls, and screams filled the valleys, canyons, and caves of mainland Greece. They rang around the grottos, cliffs, and coves of the islands until the world wondered if the Hecatonchires had come up from Tartarus and the Titanomachy had started all over again. Zeus's brothers, sisters, and other family members clustered concernedly about him on the seashore, where they had found him begging his nephew Triton, Poseidon's eldest, to drown him in seawater. Triton declined to do any such thing, so everyone racked their brains and tried to think of another solution, while poor Zeus stamped and yelled in torment, squeezing his head in his hands as if trying to crush it. Then Prometheus, Zeus's favourite young Titan, came up with an idea which he whispered to Hephaestus, who nodded eagerly before limping back to his smithy as fast as his imperfect legs could carry him. What was happening inside Zeus's head was rather interesting. It was no wonder that he was suffering such excruciating pain, for crafty Metis was hard at work inside his skull, smelting, firing, and hammering out armour and weaponry. There was enough iron and other metals, minerals, rare earths, and trace elements in the god's varied, healthy, and balanced diet to allow her to find in his blood and bones all the ingredients, all the ores and compounds she needed. Hephaestus, who would have approved of her rudimentary but effective metalworking, returned to the crowded beach carrying a huge double-bladed axe. Prometheus now persuaded Zeus that the only way to alleviate his agony was to take his hands away from his temples, kneel down, and have faith. Zeus muttered something about the trouble with being the king of the gods was that there was no one high to pray to, but he dropped obediently to his knees and awaited his fate. Hephaestus spat cheerfully and confidently on his hands, gripped the thick wooden haft and, as the hushed crowd looked on, brought it down in one swift swinging movement clean through the very centre of Zeus's skull, splitting it neatly in two. There was a terrible silence as everyone stared in stunned horror. The stunned horror turned to wild disbelief, and the wild disbelief to bewildered amazement as they now witnessed, rising up from inside Zeus's opened head, the tip of a spear. It was followed by the topmost plumes of a russet crest. The onlookers held their breaths as slowly there arose into view a female figure dressed in full armour. Zeus lowered his head. Whether in pain, relief, submission, or sheer awe, nobody could be certain, and, as if his bowed head had been a ramp or gangway let down for her convenience, the glorious being stepped calmly onto the sand and turned to face him. Equipped with plated armour, shield, spear, and plumed helmet, she gazed at her father with eyes of a matchless and wonderful grey, a grey that seemed to radiate one quality above all others: infinite wisdom. From one of the pines that fringed the shoreline, an owl flew out and perched on the shining she-warrior's shoulder. From the dunes, an emerald snake slid forward and coiled itself about her feet. With a slightly unpleasant slurping sound, Zeus's head closed up its wound and healed itself. It was clear at once to all present that this new goddess was endowed with levels of power and personality that raised her above all the immortals. Even Hera, who realised that the newcomer could only be the issue of an adulterous affair that must have taken place very close to her wedding day, was nearly tempted to bend her knee. Zeus gazed at the daughter who had caused him so much pain and smiled a warm smile. A name came to him and he spoke it. Athena. Father, she said, smiling gently in return. Okay, I'm going to leave the reading there then. I hope you enjoyed that one. I really like that story of how Athena was born from her father's head, Zeus's head being split open by an axe. So I hope then you kind of picked up some of the references that we've heard in the Odyssey. Quite often she's referred to as owl-eyed Athena or grey-eyed Athena. So you heard about how the owl came swooping from the pine trees and landed on her shoulder, and also the snake that came and unravelled itself around her feet. So Athena's definitely kind of one of my favourites. She's kind of known as being wise and beautiful, but not in the same ways like Aphrodite, because Aphrodite was more about kind of like lustful love, but Athena kind of represented what we'd call, and Freya explains this, like platonic love. So a kind of more gracious love, I suppose. She becomes in the Odyssey that we've been studying, she becomes the kind of the mentor to Telemachus, to kind of help him become a man and to help him kind of find his way in the world, because up at the beginning of the poem, Telemachus is a moody teenager, isn't he? He's kind of stomping around and complaining all about how, his life is so unfair, and he wasn't his dad. He wishes Odysseus wasn't his father, and that someone could come and help him get rid of all these suitors. And he just does a lot of moaning and moping and complaining. And then Athena comes along in disguise, obviously, and kind of blows his trumpet and gives him some kind of a bit of a confidence boost, which is very easily done to a teenage boy, but she kind of gives him that confidence that he was lacking, so that he is able to go on and go on his own little odyssey, his own little journey to try and find out information about his father. So without her guiding him every step of the way there, he probably wouldn't have been successful. And also remember, it was Athena that helped Odysseus get off of Calypso's island. Without her interference, without her help, Odysseus would have been trapped there for forever, as he'd been for the past kind of 7 or 8 years. So I hope you liked that one. Let me know what you thought, if you've got any questions or there's anything more that you want to know, and I'll have a think about where we go next. I'll try and do another one this week to make up for my my lack of video last week. So I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to hearing what you thought about it. Thanks guys.